everyone. If you're looking to join the EDFacts Modernization webinar, you're in the right place, and we are going to go ahead and get started. For starters, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I know today is a big day for modernization information, so there may be people where this is the first time they're hearing that. So we're excited to have you all joining us today. I'd like to point out that we have a new feature in WebEx. We have a closed captioning option now offered directly in the screen, the WebEx platform. So in the bottom left corner, there is a CC option. If you click that, you have the availability to choose your own closed captioning. This is new and enhanced, and it seems to be working well for other webinars that we've held, so we're excited to offer that. Additionally, just want to remind you that make sure your computer speakers are enabled to hear audio. You should log into Google Chrome, but if you have any issues throughout today's presentation with WebEx, please contact PSC so that we can go ahead and help you. My name is Jess Green, and I am going to be presenting today alongside the department. So we have a great agenda for today. The first thing we're going to go over with you all are 2022 and 23 due dates. We're going to have some reminders about data notes towards the end of today's presentation. We're going to go over some EDPass user account functionality and data areas information. This may be new to a lot of you, so we're excited to go over that. We'll have some screenshots of EDPass, all from development, an update on the Common Education Data Standards, and a Q&A session at the end. One thing I'd like to remind you is that today's session will be recorded and it will be posted to the EDFacts Community of Practice site. So if for any reason you have to leave early or someone in your organization is unable to join us today, they are going to be able to view the recording. We will make sure to send out a broadcast when it's available so that you are able to access that link. One other thing I'd like to go over that I left out is that today we encourage you to provide any questions that you have in the Q&A panel. That is the question and answer panel of WebEx. If you can not use chat, that would be ideal. It's a little bit more organized and easier for you all to see the questions and then the answers as they come through in the Q&A panel. Additionally, today we are going to take the questions slightly different than we have in the past. So if for whatever reason today you ask a question and it is not directly answered, please know that we are taking that question back to provide a complete and formal response and accurate, and it will be posted. The whole Q&A log will be posted with the recording. So please don't feel that we're skipping over you or we're not responding. We're simply just going to review it after the webinar to provide a full, accurate response. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Kelly Worthington for remarks from the branch chief.
Thank you, Jess, and you can go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're delighted to have you. I just want to kick it off saying, reminding people that we do have a wider audience here. For my team, we may still use some of the acronyms or some of the terms that are only understandable to the group that we typically work with. So please make sure and let us know. If we're saying something that you don't understand, call us out on that so that we can be more complete in our descriptions and definitions. But the data governance reminder is that we are inviting a wide group of people because part of what we are doing with our modernization is ensuring that we have accurate data that is usable for the department at the due date. So there needs to be better attention, I guess, on the quality of the data that is submitted to the department. So that means more work up front and far less work after the submission point, and no need for the communication that we have had in prior years that goes back and forth and takes a lot of time for you and for us. So we're trying to make things much more efficient. So that's part of the goal with what we're doing here. So the expectation is that our data stewards or subject matter experts will be much more involved in the data quality process prior to the due dates. One of those upcoming examples that we're going to be talking about will be related to the assessment data that is then taken from the data files and pre-populated into an IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, performance plan. And that data needs to be accurate to be usable for that performance plan. So just wanted to remind everybody that it is critically important that we make sure we are broadening who we are including in our data quality process right up front. Part of what we have done with that is to make sure that we are tending to our business rules in the data quality process. So that will be happening in school year 22-23. But if you are new here, the main takeaway, and these are the same slide, this is the same information that we presented on the last webinar. If you're new, the goal is to develop a high-level understanding of the process changes for the upcoming school year. So for 22-23 data, understand how that data quality review process is going to occur, walk away with an understanding of the data notes process. Make sure that you know who the data submitters are, make sure you know who the subject matter experts are that would be able to identify a mistake that's in the data. So the other piece, walk away knowing what your due dates are for the data files that you oversee, or the data that you know the best. Plan to review and address data quality issues before the due dates. Watch for next steps at the end of the webinar here. So if you're not new, all the same above applies, but I just wanted to give a few tips for the people who are brand new here. I do also hope that the people who've been doing this for a number of years will be able to see benefits from the changes that we're making in the very near future, and we'll be able to talk about that from the standpoint that we want you spending more time using the data, knowing what's going on with the kids in your state, with the teachers, with the schools. Where do we have problems? Where do we have really good things happening, so that we're not spending as much time trying to correct data quality issues that we could get right from the start. So I just wanted to put that out as some encouragement. We are doing more to support data governance. We are opening up the system to more people, and David's going to be talking through that. But at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to David, who's going to be talking about due dates and system. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Lee. I'm part of the EDFacts team here, leading the effort in developing and implementing our new application, EDPass. So I will be presenting a little bit later in the webinar, the system screenshots, but I wanted to take a few minutes here to give you a quick update on the school year 22-23 file submission timeline. Most of you should already know, but we've posted the early dates. As you can see on this slide 6 here, the dates that we posted, the first 3 due dates we've posted include the accountability, CCD and charter, and then CCD and IDEA, including some metadata that are due in the next several months. We're currently working on finalizing the remaining file due date schedule for 22-23. We have communicated a draft schedule for up to 6 due dates, depending on the grant program and data use for the use of those data that we are collecting. Whether it's for an annual performance report product, a public data release file, or even for the CSPR. So that's currently being worked on. And there are multiple factors that we are considering when we're trying to finalize the next batch or the next 4 to 6 due dates that we'll be publishing here in the next several weeks. Some of the factors I want to just kind of point out to you and just kind of allay some concerns that you may have is that we're considering business rules. So as we go through this, you'll hear a lot about the business rules and data quality. But as you know, when you're submitting your files, there are business rules that execute across files. So no longer will we be executing business rules multiple times because files have different due dates. We are going to batch files together. So we will execute business rules at one time across files that are due at the same time. And that should help alleviate some of the resubmissions or the data data updates or corrections that states have had to make in the past because of the different due dates for different files. We've also gotten some feedback from a focus group that we've had that consisted of about a dozen states for feedback regarding the initial due date schedule that we had proposed. I know that some states did think that having fewer due dates with longer quote unquote breaks in between the due dates would help, but also other states did express that having multiple or more due dates would help them because it would provide more flexibility, although on the front end states would have to kind of plan accordingly, but they did find help with that flexibility. Some of the other concerns that we did hear was that the CSPR would need to be aligned with the due dates that we are proposing, and I would like to confirm that OESC did. We did talk to OESC, who manages a CSPR, and that they are on board in terms of aligning their CSPR dates with our due dates. One thing I'd like to reiterate is that we are trying to make sure that we are enabling these files for states to submit as early as possible. So that'll allow the states or you guys to upload your data, run your data quality checks, and then resolve them in ample time before the due date. And you'll kind of see that when I present the system slides and how we're going to run through the upload data quality and the submission process. But our goal is to, as Kelly had mentioned, is to have final usable data as of the due date, and allowing states to have ample time uploading and running data quality prior to a due date is our goal. And so we are trying to get the due dates and then the enabling of files in EDPass as early as possible. And as I had mentioned, we are anticipating posting the rest of the due dates here within the next several weeks. So you should be getting some communication from PSC, whether through a broadcast or the biweekly PSC support update with those due dates. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jess to talk about user accounts, functionality, and data areas.
Thanks, David. Okay, so today we are going to go over user accounts, some functionalities and data areas. Some things are going to be different from the way you all currently submit files. So we're just going to kind of provide a high-level overview of this for you all. And then if you have any questions, you can always reach out to PSC, but we really encourage you to work with your EDFacts coordinator because they were presented this information and are the ones who will be managing the accounts. So as always, contact us if you have any questions after today's webinar, but we really, really encourage you to communicate with your EDFacts coordinator. So EDPass is the new data quality application tool. It's going to launch in February for the CCD and charter files. So with EDPass, there is going to be a state EDPass manager, and there will be 2 users per state assigned this role. And what this role gives them access to is really all EDPass functionalities, which we'll go over in a minute, for all data areas or all file specifications, all data collected. The other feature of the EDPass manager role is that it gives administrative access to create and maintain all state user accounts. So currently, if a user in your state needs access to any system, whether it's ESS, OMB Max, or EMAPS, for example, the point of contact, whether it's the EDFacts coordinator or the Part B data manager, contacts PSC and notifies us that you have a new user in your state, and we facilitate all of that. Going forward, the EDFacts coordinator and the other EDPass manager will be facilitating that. So that's a big process change that's going to take place going forward with EDPass. The other feature of this role is that states have, these individuals have the ability to create state-defined roles. So roles is a big part of EDPass, and it's really state-specific. It's a really great feature that allows states to use data governance and their specific internal processes to make EDPass work for your state. So this is something that came out of the focus group, being able to create these types of individualized roles per data, and really just set up user accounts that work for your state instead of one streamlined way. It's able to be individualized. So you have 2 state EDPass managers per state, and then all other users will essentially be state EDPass users, or just a general user. There's not a cap on the number of general users your state can have. So if you have 5 people that do everything in ESS right now, and it's going to stay that way process-wise, you guys are going to have perfect processes and it'll stay the same, then you'll have 5 users. If you're a bigger state and you're going to allow more people to have access to EDPass so they can resolve data quality or upload files or so on and so forth, there's no limit to the number of people who have access. So that's a really great feature because you can really streamline those state processes to make sure that everyone is in charge of their step of the data quality review. And then the accounts, as I mentioned, are created and maintained by the state EDPass managers. So communication is going to be key, and the roles, we encourage you all to speak the state EDPass managers to start communicating and discussing roles with each program in your organization to determine those processes and how you guys are going to set those up. As I mentioned, this information was communicated to EDFacts coordinators specifically on November 30th. So between now and February, this is one of the processes you guys should be prioritizing, is setting up roles and identifying individuals and their level of access that's needed. Which brings me to my next point of EDPass functions and data areas. So functions are pretty much just how someone can access data and what they can do in the system. Your data areas are going to be groups of file specifications based on program area. So if you look at the left, all of the functionalities available are listed here. So I'm going to go through them at a high level just to kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown of how EDPass is going to function differently than, like, for example, currently ESS or EMAPS. So view is exactly what it sounds like. View data. You can give someone access to view data in EDPass. Upload and submit are 2 separate functions in EDPass. So in ESS currently, a user logs in and they submit a file to ESS, which essentially loads it to the database and submits the data to the department. In EDPass, those 2 functions are broken up. So there will be the ability to upload a data file, meaning they are literally just uploading it to almost like a sandbox functionality where you'll be able to critique the file and clean it up. And then submitting is a separate function. So someone can have the ability to submit the data to the department when it's ready and cleaned. Metadata is going to be a separate function. So if someone fills out a metadata, so currently the assessment metadata survey is open for submission for 21-22. In EDPass, if that same person needs access to the assessment metadata once it's built out, you would give them metadata access. This will give them access to respond to the metadata questions. If they don't have metadata access, and let's say they have upload, you're allowing them to upload the data files, just not edit or submit any metadata. So I hope that explains those 2 functions. State submission plan, it's its own functionality. So if you want someone to have access to the state submission plan for all files, you would give them state submission plan access. Resolve data quality rule failures. This is a big one. This is going to be how your state resolves data quality errors. So anyone that currently has access to any data quality review, Part B data quality reviews, the ESEA December and February data quality reviews or CDQR spreadsheets that you all receive, GFSA data quality, CCD data quality, and the DMS. Anyone that has access or is part of your data quality review process is going to want, you're going to want to create a role for them who with resolved DQ rule failures. So this is a big functionality that a lot of folks in your state may have in order to enhance your data quality process, or maybe just a couple. So those are the functionalities in short. Yes, they will have, we have a huge data dictionary. Everything I just went over was emailed to the EDFacts coordinators with definitions. So I'm not going to go over the data areas in detail. That information's been mailed out again to the EDFacts coordinators, and it will be in the user guides that we publish. But data areas equal programs. So let's take the assessment data area, for example. All 6 assessment files for reading, math, and science are included in that program. So if you give someone the assessment data area access, they're going to have access to all those, whatever level of functionality you give them, they'll have for those 6 files. You can create roles that have multiple data areas with multiple functions, or you can create a view role for only assessment data, or a data quality role for assessment data. So you can truly make these roles that you're going to create for the state EDPass managers defined to fit your state needs and your state processes and data governance. So those will be broken down in the documentation that we provide. So the next thing I'm going to show you is a demonstration, a quick demonstration of how to log into EDPass. So as previously communicated, in order to access EDPass, you will be required to have a login.gov account. We've encouraged the state EDPass managers to reach out to folks in the state that need access to EDPass and start setting up those login.gov accounts between now and February. It's a very quick, probably about a 5-minute process, and it requires 2 forms of multi-factor authentication. And then once it's set up, you're good to go until your EDFacts coordinator lets you know that you guys can start creating EDPass accounts, and they will work with you. But we kind of just wanted to give you a quick overview of what it looks like. So when you log in, you'll go to the EDPass website, and the EDFacts coordinator will connect your, okay, give me one moment here. This happened to me last time, I apologize. The EDFacts coordinator will give you the green light to create your login.gov account. Once you create your login.gov account, the EDFacts coordinator will then go in EDPass and connect your login.gov account to your EDPass account. And it's all for security purposes. And so then I have the video. There we go. So then you will accept the terms of service, and at the bottom you'll click sign in with basically login.gov, and it routes and connects to these 2 accounts. So you'll enter your credentials, and basically the EDPass will communicate with login.gov. It'll ask you for one form of the 2 multi-factor authentications that you've set up with your login.gov account. And then once it validates everything, it will load and log you into EDPass, which will take you straight to the landing page, which is what you see here. It's a really simple process to set up login.gov. It does not require anything specific other than 2 forms of multi-factor authentication. And for this purpose, you must use your state assigned email address. So make sure that you're using that and make sure that you're not using a personal email address for that. So I'm actually going to hand it back over to David, and he is going to take us through some screenshots of EDPass, which are still under development and could change by the time you see it. But right now, this is what it's looking like.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Again, this is David. Jess, it looks like we're doing pretty good on time. And I know that we had initially said that we would answer questions after the webinar separately, but I'm going to call an audible here. And if you see any specific questions about the screenshots in the Q&A, I will pause to ask if there are any significant questions, and let's just see if we can answer as many as we can as we go. And then depending on time, we will cut the question short.
Sounds great.
Okay, so for those of you who've seen these screenshots, they are pretty much the same. Not a whole lot has been updated since. There may be some tweaks here and there that we've made. But for those of you who are new, please go ahead and ask any questions in the Q&A, and we'll try and get those addressed as we go along, depending on time. One thing I'd like to remind you all is that these are draft-only screenshots. We are very close to finalizing these, so you won't see a whole lot of change, maybe some titles or language here and there, text or formatting, they may have changed, but the overall functionality and concept of the pages that I'm about to share will probably remain the same, but I do want to note that they are still in draft only. So once you log in to EDPass, you will see the landing page. We're calling the landing page. You'll have a blue bar at the top with some main functions. And then you'll have quick links, so resource links on the left. You'll have the quick links of the EDFacts data reporting documentation and any EDPass related documentation. And then on the right, you'll have information for PSC. And of course, the paperwork burden statement at the bottom. Okay, next slide. What I'm going to do over the next several slides is just go through the tabs at the top, the blue bar, and a little bit more detail. So the first is the administration page. That is primarily for the SCA EDPass manager, and as Jess had explained prior, that's where the SCA EDPass manager will go in to manage any SCA user accounts or SCA defined rules. Next slide. The file specification list page. This, I will note that we are working on a new name for this page. So this page name will change. We're just working on what that would be. But as for now, we'll still call it the file specification list page. This page is basically your day-to-day work page. And I'll show you a detail of this page in a little bit later. But this is where you're going to be spending most of your time. You're going to monitor your data file status, your state submission plan, any DQ errors, and then your data submission requirements as they become available for each of the files that you are trying to upload and submit. Next page. And then lastly, you have the upload page. That's where you're going to be able to upload your files to EDPass. So we're going to start with the upload page to go into a little bit more detail. This is the general upload page. So when you're at that blue bar, if you click on upload, you're going to get to this page. It's called the upload page, obviously. And initially, you're not going to have anything at the bottom. So if you haven't uploaded anything, obviously, you're not going to have anything in the list of file specs at the bottom. But you will have the option to drag your file or browse your local drive in order to upload the files that you need to upload. Next page. One thing I want to note here is that there are two main upload options. One is to merge with any existing files or data that you've already uploaded, or to replace existing files you have uploaded. So currently in ESS, when you need to delete data wholly, you'd have to contact PSC, request a delete, and get program office approval, and then follow that process. The new process in EDPass is that you will be able to control whether you merge your uploading data to, can you go back, Jess? Yeah. Whether you want to merge your data to existing data, or if you want to delete data that you've already uploaded, you will be able to do that yourself within the upload page. Next slide, please. So going back to the upload page, once you upload your data, every file will go through a format and file error check. That's automatically done. And you'll see in the red box here, I've kind of pointed out where, for example, you may have file errors, you may have format errors. Some files may be processing, and then once you get through the processing, have no file errors or format errors, then you'll get to your upload successful there at the very bottom. Now, there is a kebab menu at the right where you see those three dots. If you click on that kebab menu, that's where you can go in and download the data that you've already uploaded. You can go to the file errors page or format errors page to see what type of errors have prevented you from uploading your file successfully. And so that's where you want to go find out what the issue is, and then either re-upload or correct the data that I guess you have to re-upload, but you'll have to correct the file or the data that's triggering the error or the format error. This is essentially the validation edit or the format error that is currently in ESS. So you can kind of think of that as that process here. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is, so now we're at the file specification list. And as you remember, I said that this is your day-to-day hub. So this is where you are going to want to spend most of your time. Actually, let me pause here real quick and see, Jess, if we have any questions on the upload page.
There's no questions on the upload page.
Okay. So like I said, the file specification list that we will be renaming is your day-to-day hub where you'll be doing most of your work. So I want to spend some time here to kind of go through the details of this page. Next slide, please. So first, you'll see the column headers where you have your due date, your school year, file spec number, file spec name, and then the reporting levels and the state submission plan. These columns are all filterable, so you'll be able to filter them or do sortable. So you'll be able to sort them or filter them accordingly as you are trying to resolve your issues or see where your file specs stand. Another functionality on this page is that you'll be able to download the page. So if you want to download a list of all your files and the statuses of the files, you can do so, and you can sort and work on that list outside of EDPass if that is more if that's easier for you to work. As I mentioned, you can also search and do filters and obviously clear filters once you've made them, but you can do searches on this page to find specific file specs or things that you'd like to search for. And of course, you can download and do that as well. Okay, on the left-hand side, just to kind of go into a little bit more detail, you'll see the due dates listed here. When you first pull them up, it'll be in chronological order. But of course, you can sort them and filter them as you see fit. And then you'll have the school year, the file spec number, and also the file spec name that you can use if that's easier for you as well. On the right-hand side are the reporting levels. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of the different statuses, but in a nutshell, what this is, it'll show you the status of each file that you have submitted, and the date and timestamp of each of those, and along with the if there are any errors or things that you need to take action on. Okay, so as I mentioned, the file statuses in EDPass, if you look at the little red box here, I pulled that out from the previous slide. You'll see the various different statuses of the files that you've uploaded to EDPass. And so the first is no data. So when you see no data as a status, that just means that the file has not been successfully uploaded to EDPass. That means either you have not attempted to upload, or you've uploaded and you were not able to successfully upload it because of file errors or format errors. And so you'll see a status of no data for those type of files. The next is errors. You'll see errors if you have uploaded a file to EDPass successfully. However, during the data quality error check, there are data quality errors that you must resolve. And so in the new EDPass, once you upload your data successfully, it'll automatically trigger the data quality process. And so as it goes through that process, the file, if it has data quality errors, it will be updated with the status of errors and the date and timestamp in the file spec list page.
David,
Submitted means that the file at all levels have been finalized and submitted to the department. And the key here is at all levels. When you submit a file or you're ready to submit a file spec, all levels of that file spec must be finalized in order for you to submit. So no longer can you submit just the SCA or LEA file, for example, for the 175 file spec. You need to have all three levels submitted, ready to submit in order to successfully submit to the department. Not collected status means that that file is not collected per the OMB package requirements. So basically, it's usually a level, a reporting level that we don't collect. For example, a school level may not be collected for a certain file, but only the LEA or SCA, and so on. Not required is also a status that we use. If there are data files that your SCA in particular does not need to submit because the program office has accepted or approved that you do not need to submit a required file, then you will see not required as a status for that file and reporting level. Okay, again, I'm going to pause here real quick to see if there are any questions.
There's a couple questions. I've provided answers, but let's review them so that if someone else has the same question, they might not be reading the Q&A. So someone mentioned that they were wondering who they could ask for help with login.gov. They believe they created an account, but they don't think the account was created due to some network issues. So for login.gov, it's pretty straightforward. My first suggestion would be to try like a password reset link on that site. I would go to the setup page, the link that was provided to you all. But if you're still having trouble, please contact PSC and we will troubleshoot it together to work on that login.gov account. The next question is, if the file processes without errors when initially uploaded, will it automatically submit or will we need to upload again for it to be officially submitted? Would you like to answer that, David, or would you like me to take it?
It looks like you provided an answer, but I'll just provide one verbally. If the file process without it. So once you upload a file and it goes to the initial file upload review process, meaning there are no file errors or format errors, then it will be uploaded successfully, and then it'll go through the data quality process. If it goes through the data quality process and there are no issues or data quality issues that the state needs to take action, then it'll be under the ready to submit status. And then I'll eventually show you the page here where you can go and submit that file. But again, the file needs to be ready at every reporting level. So if you've done that with the SCA file and the LEA and school are also required, you would have to upload, go through the file checks, data quality checks at the LEA and school level, have all three of those levels ready to submit in order to officially submit to the department.
Thanks, David. The only other question is, once the system is live, will additional webinars take place to guide users through the process of beginning to end? Yes, PSC will be having technical webinars. We will also, we're planning to do working sessions similar to open office hours when EDPass goes live. But also we'll have short technical videos because we know some folks don't have time to attend webinars all the time. So we're hoping that short technical videos under 2-3 minutes to kind of guide you through each step of the way will be helpful for when EDPass goes live. And that's it, David.
Okay, so jumping back to the file specification list page, if you've noticed on the right side of that page, we also have a kebab menu there. And if you click on those 3 dots there, you'll see a list of 4 options that you can go to: data quality results, SSP, the state submission plan, submit data, and download data. So what I want to do is walk through each of those right now. Next slide, sorry. So the first is the state submission plan. If you go to the state submission plan and click on that button there, you'll get to the state submission plan page. Now the state submission plan page should look familiar because we've kind of carried it over from the current SSP, where you'll be able to update the status, data anomalies, timeliness, and then expected late submission date if needed. So there are notes there. I mean, there are text boxes there that you can enter any explanations or notes regarding each of those items, data elements, and then you can save that. And that will, if you go to the next slide, that will update the state submission plan as you see here. So this is an example of a state submission plan that has some updates in it. You'll see the status, data anomaly, timeliness, and then expected late submission date with some notes there. And you can always edit this. Can you go back, please? And you can always edit this page as you need. And of course, you have the download button where you can download and then view it external to EDPass as well. Okay, the next kebab menu I'd like to show is the download data. This is pretty self-explanatory. If you go to the next slide, please. Once you click that download data, you'll be able to go to a specific file specification and then download the data, whichever level, reporting level, and then whichever version. So for example, if you want to, download the data that is in progress, you can do so, or you can download the prior submitted version if you need to compare it to any updates that you may need to make. Okay, I'm getting a note here that we may have some questions in the chat window. Jess, can we check that real quick?
Yep, we can check that. Some of them they've moved over to the Q&A, but let's go through them. So the first one is, can we download the historical data we submitted in previous years?
That functionality should be available. Obviously, the first year of EDPass, if you're referring to the first year, so when we go live, we will not have those data available in the first year of EDPass because we will not be able to copy over prior year data that you've submitted in ESS over to EDPass. But in future years, yes, you should have that capability that we'll probably implement as an enhancement in order to be available, have available the prior year data that you've submitted.
Will all data quality outreach be done the old-fashioned way for 21-22 data submissions?
21-22, yes, I believe so. That I can confirm that. I'm not really involved in that process right now, so what I will do is I will confirm that. I believe the 21-22 review process will remain the same. And this EDPass and the data quality within the system or the application is referring to 22-23.
David, this is Kelly. I can confirm
Yes.
that, yeah, your answer is correct. 21-22 data will still be running on the old process. The one thing that we are doing from a process change to help people get prepared for that is the messaging related to the IDEA and OESE or the assessment data that's submitted to make sure that you're communicating with the stakeholders so that there will be fewer corrections that are needed. I know we've been messaging that for a little bit here and it's due, I believe, next week. So but as far as the process goes, yes, we'll be on the same process for 21-22 data.
Great, thank you. I'm a little confused by merge and upload or replace. Can you explain?
You can think of it this way. Merge is basically you are adding data to something you've already uploaded. So for example, if you've submitted ABC and you want to add on D&E, you would just upload. It wouldn't overwrite or clear out the data that you already have existing. It would merge or add on to the data that you've already uploaded. Replace, basically what it does is it deletes everything that you've already uploaded, regardless of whether so for example, if you submitted ABC and you're now submitting D and E, but you choose the replace option, it will delete ABC. So it'll clear out everything that you've already submitted and only take D and E. So now your data, you are starting at D and E, not A through E. I'm sorry if that didn't really make sense. It kind of did to me, but that's how you can look at it, simply put.
Yeah, and to add to that, that is in the upload process when you can identify whether you're merging or replacing. So if you guys think of it as you do now, if you forgot a school and you want to add a school to your directory file, instead of choosing replace, you would choose merge. But if you realized your directory had a bunch of closed schools in it and you kind of just want to start fresh, you can take your new source file and choose the replace option and it'll overwrite whatever is in the EDPass database. And then you can click submit and it'll overwrite what's in what you're submitting to the department. So David's right. It does sound a little confusing explaining to it. We will provide training on this, especially once we have access to the system and we can show you guys exactly how it functions. Someone was asking if we have distributed the link to access EDPass. No, we have not sent any links to access EDPass because it is not live yet. So that link will be provided right before February 27th. And then you guys will have access to that website on the 27th. If a user does not have permissions for state submission plan in EDPass, will they be able to see the state submission plan option in the kebab menu?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just off the top of my head, these kebab menus are not dynamic to role. So I believe you will still be able to see that option. You will not be able to access it, but I will confirm that and provide a response in our written Q&A response post webinar.
The next question is, how do we handle legit errors? And I think you are referring to maybe, well, I don't know. I can interpret it, but David, I don't know if you want to compare like if you just want to provide a brief overview of the difference between the file upload errors and then like the data quality errors. I think that's confusing a little bit.
So the file error or the format error deals with what you would think of currently as like a validation error, for example. So if you submit a file with an invalid permitted value, so for example, sorry, I'm blanking here, but if you submit a file for grades offered and you put in 75 or something, that would give you a file error, meaning your permitted value is not permitted. So it's a validation error that we've had in the past. The file error is more of a format error, sorry, is more of a traditional format error where you upload a file where the header is incorrect or something like that. And so those are errors that will not allow you to upload, essentially put your data in EDPass. And those need to be resolved before the data are accepted or uploaded into EDPass. The data quality results are more of, okay, now you've uploaded your data into EDPass. We are going to do some data quality checks. Does A plus B equal C? Things like that, where you can look at those data quality results, take action to either update your data and re-upload, or you would provide a data note to say, no, A plus B does not equal C in our state because of these various reasons. And the data notes, I believe someone will be presenting that later in the webinar. So we'll give you some examples and resources on how and what to write for your data notes that will support the data quality results. But those are the primary differences between an upload error versus a data quality result.
Awesome, thank you.
And I'm seeing quite a few questions, I think, about the merge and replace. And what I want to do is I just want to say that we are going to, as Jess mentioned, we're going to provide a lot of TA and possibly examples of what type of merges and replaces that will happen when you do actions within EDPass. So we can certainly provide examples of, hey, if you've uploaded this and you upload that, what will happen to your current data in a replace scenario or a merge scenario? And I think that will kind of alleviate some of the concerns it looks like folks are happening with the upload and the merge, because if I suspect I haven't explained that very well, but we'll try and get that in writing. That'll be a little bit more helpful.
Yeah, we'll do a focused training on that as well, or incorporate it so it's highlighted once we get closer to when you guys will start uploading and submitting data. Another question I saw a couple times asked is, if the prior year data will not be available for user download, will the business rules that focus on year-to-year changes still be running for 22-23?
Because we will not have the prior data within EDPass, the year-to-year edits will be handled outside of EDPass for the first year.
And I think that's it. The other ones were about merge. So I think we can continue.
Hey, Jess, I think there was one question on the Q&A about business rules, the data quality on the business rules running overnight or on request. And I don't think that we answered that. And if we did, I apologize. I think this was.
Nope. You're right. I read that, but I scrolled down. That's a good question. Are the data quality business rules running overnight or on request? If overnight, does this mean we have to upload the file at the very latest the day before the due date?
The data quality rules are not run overnight. I can confirm that, but I believe they're run once data have been uploaded.
Correct.
So I guess the underlying concern is whether you have to wait or not, and the answer to that is no. It should be much quicker in terms of the turnaround of getting your data quality results once you upload to take action.
Okay, and there's one other question. Will the SSP be per line item, or will we also have the option to update the complete list like the current process in EMAPS?
I'm not understanding that question. What is it, Jess? Do you know what it means by per line item?
Yes, so I think the question is, if you're looking at the file spec list, you have the option to update the state submission plan per file. Versus in the current process, you can update multiple files at once.
That's a good question. I believe it's per file, so you'd have to go into each file and update the SSP. But again, I will confirm that.
Okay, perfect. That's it for right now.
Okay. Let's move on then to the data quality results page from the file spec list page. So if you go to the data quality list results kebab menu option, you'll be navigated to the list of errors. On the left-hand side, you'll have the rule, it'll identify the rule or rules that have failed. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the count of instances. So for example, how many have been resolved or how many have been unresolved, are still unresolved. And then the other information in terms of data group and the error message. One thing you can do is, as each of these pages allows, you can download this data separately so you can work on it outside of EDPass, but also you can view the details of each error that failed. So if you go to the next slide, once you go to the view details page, you'll be able to see at what level and the details, including the condition. So for example, what values trigger the error. One thing to note here also is that there are data notes. So as I mentioned before, for data quality issues, unlike the upload, the data quality issues need to be resolved either with the data note or you need to correct the data and re-upload. So here you'll see, can you go back a slide, please? You'll see on the right-hand side, there's a data note column with the data note ID. So those are hyperlinks where you can click. And if you click, you'll get to the next page where you can see the data, so the data note page. So here you can see the data note at the bottom that you've attached or associated with the specific error that is triggered. One thing you can do here to note is that you can attribute one data note to multiple errors. So for example, if you want to put a single data note saying data are correct because XYZ or an explanation, and then attribute that to each of the errors, you can just click the check boxes, you can check the boxes and attribute a single data note to multiple errors. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you on the file spec list page is the submit data. So if you look at this page here, can you go back a slide? You'll see the first row, the 045 immigrant file. Those have all been submitted, but you'll see the next row, the 178 file, where all three levels, reporting levels, are ready to submit. So if you go to that kebab menu and you click the submit data button, you'll get to the submit data page. It's pretty straightforward. You'll get the file that you are trying to submit along with the status. So they should all be in ready to submit status, or it could be in ready to submit, but not collected in other reporting levels if they're not collected at those levels. So if you have an error, if you have any other status other than these two, you will not be able to submit. So the submit button will be grayed out, actually, preventing submission. Now, the left-hand side pop-up is an example of two files that need to be submitted together. So they rely on each other. They're tied together in order to submit. So I believe we only have one or two instances where there are multiple files tied together in order to submit, and both of these files in those cases must be ready to submit in order to submit both at the same time. The right hand is the more straightforward to the remaining files, where just one file at a time you're ready to submit, and you can submit that file. Any questions about the data quality page or the submit function?
There were no new questions, David.
Hey,
Okay.
David,
Yeah.
I had one follow-up on a question that we received earlier, which was about the time, how much time they needed to be able to run the DQ and then submit the files. And I just, as a reminder about that data governance piece, that you want to be in the system and uploading data as early as possible, running those DQ rules because those data notes should be full and complete by the time the data are due. And every file has one due date. There's some corrections that, we have an opportunity for some corrections later, but our expectation is that there should be very rarely should there be a need for corrections after the due date. So if you upload the data, run it through the business or the business rules and get your results, then meet with your data stewards to be able to formulate your data quality comments and explanations. If there is something triggering that you can't explain, those data notes that we used to get that said, I've run it, I've checked it, and it's right, those are no longer acceptable business or data quality comments. So I just want to make sure that there's an understanding that the process is changing for 22-23. Our plan is to use the data that are in the system as of the due date. So you will get that data published in products as soon as we're able to get them posted and out. And the CCD folks did a kind of pilot of this process last year, did a phenomenal job. We saw a much quicker resolution of data quality issues and much faster release of the data. So we've been transitioning into this process and expectation, because in the past up through 21-22, this is not what we have done. So if you haven't, caught that piece, I just want to make sure everybody understands the data as of the due date is the data that we're expecting to be able to use. So I would encourage you, as soon as the system is open, 5.5, 6 weeks before the due date, start loading things in there, seeing what the results are, and working with your data stewards. So that's it for me, David.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I think at this point, I'm done with my section, and I'm going to hand it off to Emily to talk about CEDS.
Well, thanks, David. Yes, this is Emily Rang, and as many of you may know, or you may not, we're going to talk a little bit about CEDS and how that can help you with modernization. So you may or may not know that CEDS and the open source community have an EDFacts working group that has been focused on building out the CEDS connections, or also known as the student level sort of to aggregate business rules for the newest OMB package of file specifications. So this working group created a template to use for those CEDS connections specifically for EDFacts. And we've had over 20 states who have participated and contributed information to the connections. So one of the most valuable ways that the group has gathered information for putting into these connections, these CEDS connections, was when we included both the subject matter experts from the state and subject matter experts from ED, who graciously joined us in a working group to review a specific set of file specifications. So this group specifically addressed questions about the data and how that data can be more accurately reflected and to represent the true educational experience that data is supposed to report. So these conversations led to better documentation in the CEDS connections for these files, and it was an opportunity for really meaningful collaboration between file experts or EDFacts coordinators and subject matter experts, again, both from the state and with our ED program office experts. So this working group is going to do, they're working on a final review of several IDEA, CCD or Common Core of Data and neglected or delinquent files. And at the completion of these the final review, these will be posted on the CEDS website. If you're interested in participating or contributing to this work group, you still can. You can find a link to join the EDFacts open source community meetings on the CEDS community site, which we'll make sure we can get added to either the chat or this PowerPoint as it gets posted. So how can CEDS help everyone with modernization, right? So if you're not doing Generate, if you're not in the CEDS open source community EDFacts working group, how else could CEDS help you? Well, the very first thing I've been recommending is that states can use these CEDS connections to help compare the business rules that you are currently using to compile your student or staff record level data to the aggregate units reported to your EDFacts files, use those CEDS connections to sort of do like a comparison from your state business rules for a particular EDFacts file to that connections version of the business rules, which has been vetted or used by your peers, right? It's an opportunity. Is there information in the way that they're compiling that that surprised you, or that maybe made you go, huh, I wonder why they're doing it that way. Maybe we should do it that way. So that's the first recommendation that I have. The second recommendation that CEDS could help you with would be leverage the model that the working group used. Do a detailed review of one of your EDFacts files and make sure that you are including and bringing along your subject matter expert at the state as you're doing that detailed review. For example, in every state where there has been a generate implementation, so we're working to, where CID is supporting the work to move data from state source systems into the CEDS in order to do EDFacts reporting using generate. And every time that a state has done that, they have found an opportunity to, something that they've been doing for a long time, or an understanding or an assumption that somebody made in the business rules, that once they started having conversations with the subject matter expert and the EDFacts coordinator, they identified an opportunity to maybe change something or make something more accurate. So reaching out to your subject matter experts and having those conversations now in preparation for knowing that data quality is the key component and focus of this EDFacts modernization could really help you. And you can use CEDS to help you do that if you refer to bullet number 1. The third item is, in a really simple format, in a really simple way, using a free tool. You could use the CEDS Align tool to maintain your data dictionary and track metadata, like who is the data steward and the data owner assigned to this data. So again, even just that simple task of kind of leveraging CEDS to help you maintain your data dictionary can give you, as a state, can give you and the ability for you to share with your stakeholders online, who those data stewards are. Who are the people I should be talking to when this particular EDFacts file comes back with a business rule validation that I need to verify. And you can use Align to help make sure that everyone in your agency or everyone who's involved in your EDFacts reporting is aware of their responsible items of data within that data dictionary when it comes to EDFacts reporting. So creating some clarity around your subject matter experts is another way that CEDS can help. So I hope that these 2 slides have given you a couple of opportunities to maybe think about after looking at and listening to this presentation on modernization. Might give you a few things that you could do between now and when EDPass is open and available. And if you have any questions, be happy to help answer those either here on the webinar, or you can always reach out to us at ceds@ed.gov. And with that, if there are any questions.
I don't see any new ones, Emily, but thank you so much. And just to piggyback off of Emily's invitation, if you have any questions and you want to stream them through PSC, we are happy. We work very closely with CEDS and Emily, so we can communicate your questions if you think of them, and don't email them to CEDS. So,
absolutely. Thank you so much, Jess, for the opportunity. And with that, I think I get to turn it back over to you.
Yes, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. All right, so moving on, there are a couple policy questions that came in. I see them. We will skip to those at the end. I just wanted to let you know I do see those. So we're gonna just kind of do a little reminder about data notes. If you have been in the prior 2 webinars, you probably have seen this content, so it is nothing new, but we just kind of want to provide an overview. So previous presentations on modernization. If you have been in the last...
Jess, can I just jump in? Apparently David and Kelly have lost audio and visual. So
Oh,
maybe we should just do a quick check and find out if anybody
Sure.
else is having difficulties. It might just be with the panel.
Sure. If you're hearing me and seeing our slides and heard Emily well, could you just let us know? I can see in here. I can see in here. Okay.
Hi, Jess, and this is Kelly. I'm back for right now. I missed most of Emily's, so I apologize if there was anything tossed this way.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Thank you guys so much. I see all your, I can hear you and see you. Thank you. We appreciate that. So, okay. So what we were going over is in June and September, there were two previous modernization webinars. At this point, a lot of the content we've reviewed and gone over in all of these webinars, but there is some individual specific information. So if you have not watched those prior webinars from June and September, please feel free to go to the EDFacts Community of Practice website, also known as COP, and you can watch the recordings, but you can also look through the slides if you just want to skim through the content. There is some different information in those. We did review data notes in the prior one. So what we went over was really just the purpose of providing a data note, what information should be provided, and then available resources. But if you're new and this is the first time you're hearing this, we are going to go over these briefly. So data notes, they are going to be a huge part of your data quality review process if they aren't already. As Kelly mentioned in the CCD pilot that we did, we really had so much so many states that were proactive with submitting data notes and getting data in before the deadline. It was encouraging to see that you guys were so adamant about being on board with the new process. So data notes were and will be a huge part of that. They provide meaningful context to data users. When the data are publicly posted, those data notes are imperative in order for individuals reading that to really interpret your data and understand any limitations that are there. So just make sure that when you're adding data notes, when you're adding them in EDPass, but also proactively beginning that process with the 21 and 22 data quality reviews that we're going to start, add good data notes. Try to provide as much information as you can to not get those data quality reviews. Let's make that a goal, to not get comments in your data quality reviews. Someone had asked previously if that process will be the same. They will, but I think this is a good time to implement those processes and start practicing, how to provide supplemental information up front. Address program office questions. Go back to prior data quality reviews and see what kind of comments you got from the program office and try to address them up front. Provide explanations with substantial changes for prior year. As David mentioned, year-to-year checks are going to be handled outside of the system. So doing that proactive outside of the EDPass system year-to-year checks and providing data notes up front is really going to help the department, especially when we're attempting to get to data that are finalized by the due date. Providing that information up front is going to be so beneficial for the program office when they're reviewing things. And productive data notes are going to provide relevant information on changes in the data. Those big changes that we see in a one-off year type thing. Those data notes are imperative. So if you're maybe wondering what kind of information you should provide in a data note, this is a great slide to share within your program area, and really try to get whoever you're assigning data quality in EDPass, they should have this information. This is going to provide reasons why business rules failed. So David mentioned that you'll be able to resolve data quality errors with data notes. Why are you resolving this edit? Like, just explain that the data was submitted accurately and this is why. These are just some reasons why business rules could fail, but also what are the next steps on, for this? If there is a one-off year and you had an issue with the data for whatever reason, what is your state doing to prevent this from happening in the future? And then the process for submitting data notes is going to change with EDPass while we modernize with 22-23. So the data notes are going to be entered in EDPass, meaning they can be entered in at the state's submission plan level, or they could be entered at a data quality error level, and they will be submitted with the data. So when you click submit, you're going to it's basically going to package all the data with the data notes and submit it to the department. And then file specification level notes, the same types of things that you enter in the state submission plan now, where they kind of impact all 3 levels. Those are notes that can be added in the SSP. And then any responses for specific business rules, which I kind of just went over. So those are at a high level. That's an overview of data notes. There are some other slides in the previous and it's the same slides, but the department presented on it. So there's a little bit more context. So feel free to go back and review that if you need to. And then the last bit of today's session is going to be general reminders and next steps. So before we continue on with modernization, I kind of just want to stop everyone in their tracks and have you guys really focus on what's happening in the next immediate future, which is next week. Kelly has already mentioned something to this degree, but next Wednesday, December 21st, is the assessment data deadline. It's also the December ESEA files. But with the assessment data, this is huge. We're really encouraging you to touch base with your Part B data manager, EDFacts coordinators, and Part B data managers. Make sure you're communicating and make sure you're reviewing the data together. Have you communicated with your state assessment director who submits the metadata survey? And are you comparing that data? Make sure you're talking and communicating and comparing that data so everything can be submitted together and is accurate upon submission. Communication went out last week to EDFacts coordinators and Part B data managers with this information. But really, as Kelly mentioned before, this is really imperative because the SPP APR opens next week and the assessment data will not be loaded until January. So whatever you're submitting in ESS for 2021-22 assessment data, just try to make it as accurate as possible so that once it hits the SPP APR, there are no issues. But anyway, you have 7 days to finalize this data. PSC has started outreach to a few states. Just with the holiday next week, we're trying to get a little bit ahead of things to get you guys on track and make sure you're not down to the deadline on Wednesday and you might be traveling. So just make sure you're communicating. Moving forward, just some resources that are available to you all. The Partner Support Center. We are here Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can contact us by email or phone, but we are always available for you. Writing good EDFacts data notes. This technical assistance document has been around for, I think, 2 or 3 years at this point, but we just recently revamped it and added some updated information. So if you haven't read it recently, please make sure you do, but use it as a resource to distribute amongst your organization so that everyone's on the same page. The IDEA Data Center, or IDC, has a really awesome technical assistance document for IDEA data notes. Even though it's geared towards IDEA, there are a lot of notes and tips in there that you can apply across the board for EDFacts data. So we really encourage you to look, and these are the direct links. So once the slides are posted, you can just go in and click these links. And then Kelly included in the chat, thank you, Kelly, the direct link to the EDFacts Community of Practice site. On the modernization tab of that page is where all prior webinars are posted with the slide decks. But in general, the EDFacts Community of Practice site is where there's an event calendar and we have the data submission organizer and things of that nature for your organization to use. So you're probably thinking, after all of this information, what should I do next? Where do I even start? So I think first and foremost, please understand that EDPass is not live right now and there's no link. So what PSC has been communicating to state EDPass managers, but specifically EDFacts coordinators, is that the main thing that we should be focusing on right now is setting up login.gov accounts for your users. Mainly for CCD, whoever will be submitting CCD and charter data in February throughout March and April. So that is the first step, something that you can work on now that will set you up for success come February. Also, the EDPass roles. Those are imperative to have for CCD and charter when EDPass goes live, because you'll want to set up those roles before we can get folks into the system. Going back to a question that was asked earlier, we will be setting up trainings for identifying roles and setting them up in EDPass. So that will all be included with the technical assistance that we're going to provide prior to EDPass. I know you guys are anticipating that. So we're doing everything we can on our end to plan and set you guys up for success. Data notes, everything we just went over, really try and start with 2122. Add good data notes, detailed and informative data notes. Try to add them as you're submitting data so that you can kind of get the groove of that process for when 2223 is collected. And then the subject matter experts in your state. Make sure you're identifying who those are and making sure that they're reviewing the data notes that you're submitting. Make sure that you have that process pinned down and that data governance is included. So these individuals should definitely have view access at the very least in EDPass to their specific data. But we're encouraging you to, allow them access to the system to resolve data quality errors and provide specific detailed data notes so that what you guys are submitting to the department is supplemental and informative. I'm speaking on behalf of the department, but the department and PSC works hand in hand on modernization, and we are working in coordination to provide you guys with as seamless as we can of a rollout of EDPass. So we will continue to communicate and alleviate any transition hurdles that are presented our way. We plan to have webinars, technical assistance docs. EDPass will have a user guide. And we're planning on rolling out TA videos. As I mentioned, I know folks can't always attend webinars, so we're hoping that those supplement in those instances. Open office hours. We're really excited to offer office hours again. So for the upcoming CCD collection for 2122, we will, which starts in January, we will have open office hours, but we will also do them when EDPass goes live again. That whole cycle starts again. So CCD will be charter and directory and grades offered. And then we've already started working with OSEP to provide open office hours for the child count data that will be collected in May through June. So we will be hosting those and having those for you all. As we continue to have the need for state input, we will reach out to the focus group that's been established so that we can gather input. Right now, there are no focus groups scheduled, but should we need something, we'll reach out. And then we are looking to do user acceptance testing at some point once the system is to a point where we can, in order to do testing with the states. So that is all I have right now. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly or David. I'm not sure if you guys have anything to add to that information before we kind of go over any questions that are in the chat.
Nothing additional to add. Thank you, Jess. And I would encourage you, if you were not part of the prior webinars, to go back and take a look at those or review the slides at least that were in those to see if there's anything you've got a question on, and submit your questions to PSC so we can get those answered.
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, there.
I don't have anything to add either.
Okay, I'm going to go down the few questions that we've received so far and just remind folks that, remind you all of two things. If you have a question, enter it into the Q&A log. I know today there was a lot of information and new information, so please submit them there. If you can't think of anything yet, but you do after, please submit them to PSC. Our email is edfacts@ed.gov. And then just a reminder that the recording of today's webinar and the slides will be posted with the full Q&A log on the COP website. So I know some folks may have to drop, just wanted to add that before we go over these questions. So, okay. So David, I think this question is for you. How are data notes going to be evaluated in EDPass?
I believe the question is referring to evaluated in the sense that the program offices will review them. And the way we've built it into EDPass is that we are asking states to be proactive in requesting the program offices to review their data notes prior to submission. So what we would encourage is that you reach out to the program offices through PSC. Once you have your data notes, you can set up sessions or phone calls with the program offices to review data notes and make sure that they're sufficient. And also just to kind of remind folks to take advantage of the TA sessions and the office hours and the resources we have, because those resources are also being reviewed by the program offices. And so what you find in there is something that the program offices are encouraging to begin with.
Awesome.
Can I add on that too, David? If you go back and take a look at that, the training that we did about the data notes, there's a pretty good template there of what is a good data note, and there really should not be any confusion about what's expected or what's needed to be included in a data note for it to be meaningful for the program office. So I just want to clarify, when David's saying contact the program office or ask in the this office hours, there really shouldn't be a need for that unless you've got something unusual, like, is this an adequate explanation for you to understand? So go back and start with the template. If you can't resolve your question using the template and using the training that's already been provided, then reach out. The program officer would be happy to, but there's no reason for the program offices to have to review all of those data notes, because we've worked with them on the training so that you would know what is an acceptable data note. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm scrolling up to, there were a couple policy questions that we received. Has your program been updated to handle gender, since California now has 3 options?
Yep, I can take that one. We are collecting the data that is required for the federal data collections, and our statutes that we're using are basically 15 or 20 years old. So there is no change in what was required for the data collection. So we are still collecting sex. However, as you all know from the OMB package, where we submitted asked some directed questions about what we are collecting and the information that we have, we are now going to be asking some metadata questions that will help us understand what the permitted values are that you are using within your state, whether it's sex, whether it's gender. We're asking you to provide that information in a metadata question. That information will be submitted with the child count data. I believe it's the June date. So that's a metadata that'll be handled with metadata. And then we'll take the information that you provide in your responses and use it in our data quality process.
Thank you, Kelly. There's one other question for you. If you're using data as of the due date, how will that work with CSPR, which has a correction period? Is the correction period going away?
I can answer that one too. Our goal is that the correction period will become obsolete, that there will not be a need for a correction period. So related to CSPR, We've got staff that are working with the OESE team who are developing the CSPR. And I'm sorry, I'm using a lot of acronyms here. The Office of Elementary and Secondary Education oversees the Consolidated State Performance Report, and that's basically all the files associated with the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA data. We are working with that team to make sure anything that could be resolved in EDPass, which would be anything that needs to be checked on the data files as submitted, that we're able to incorporate that on the front end with our EDPass business rules. It's possible we will have a little bit of a transition period in 22-23 to 23-24 if there are changes that they're making that we just are not able to incorporate. But our goal is anything that could be resolved in EDPass, you will know when you're uploading those data files and doing those data quality checks if you're going to pass the CSPR rules, as well as the EDFacts business rules that are also managed by the data stewards. If there are business rules, obviously, that CSPR does that are based on calculations that we have absolutely no control over, no way to include in the EDPass system. For those things, we obviously can't make a change. But the goal is complete and accurate data at the due date, so that there will not be a need for a correction period. And we are obviously aware that there will be exceptions, and there will be a need for people to correct data in rare circumstances. So that's what the correction period is for. And that'll kick in again in 22-23. For 21-22, we're still operating on the old process.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly, for explaining that. There is one comment to me directly, but I think this is, I can generalize it in case anyone else has the same question. Someone mentioned that they had a change in EDFacts coordinator for their state. So I know over the past few months, we've had multiple new EDFacts coordinators come in. And so just want to remind you all that if you have someone in your state that is, in a point of contact position, whether it's the EDFacts coordinator, IDEA Part B data manager, assessment director, Title II coordinator, even NRD coordinators or Title III coordinators, if someone in your state, if there is turnover, please let PSC know. EDFacts coordinators and IDEA Part B data managers, absolutely, please notify PSC immediately. We will need to set up accounts for you and make sure that you have everything you need to be able to submit at any point. But it's also important that if you don't identify someone, if someone leaves a position and you don't have a replacement, we request that an interim individual be listed so that your state is not losing out on communication. So please make sure you're communicating with us. The 21-22 collections are still going on. So it's imperative that someone is always in that spot. So I just want to make sure that we kind of mention that in general. There is a follow-up question to the CSPR comment that you said. I think the CSPR resubmission Joe's referencing may or could also relate to narrative responses on policy issues inherent to it rather than data corrections. Do you have a response to that, Kelly?
Yeah, that's probably accurate. So the need for corrections on the data files, we're trying to eliminate the need for that. So if OESE still needs a correction period for other purposes, I wouldn't expect it to go away. If they have a need for it, then they absolutely will be running it. Same with every other data steward. I just was trying to give you a picture of the goal that what we're trying to do here is to make sure that if you have final data at that due date. And we don't want you to be surprised. We don't want to have business rules that could be run on the data files before the data are populated into either CSPR or the IDEA SPP APR.
Okay. I apologize. I don't know if can you still see my screen, Kelly?
It just went black for me.
Yeah, it's black for me on my end too. I apologize for that. I tried to bring it back up, but it's WebEx is acting odd. I'm not going to mess with it in case something else pops up, but just there are no other questions at this time. Even though my screen is black, we're still here. If you guys still have questions, please post them in the chat. I'm going to give it about a minute or two to let you guys follow up. So just hang tight for a minute. I'm not going to end it just yet. So I'm going to mute here for just a moment. Just a reminder, if you have a question, just plop it in the Q&A. I'm going to give it just another minute or two in case people are typing.
And just while people are wrapping up, I'll just say a couple of words here. I don't think I added this earlier. I may have, but just wanted to say thank you to the folks who were participating, both in the focus groups, any of the meetings that we have had over the last couple of years. We have received such helpful, functional, useful input, questions on what we were doing, why we were doing it. We hope you see that we are reflecting those things in the process as well as in the system. We are very, very grateful that you've participated with us in the building and development process for the new system and process. We also are very grateful to our ed partners, our data stewards. Obviously, when you make a change in process, there's a lot of nervousness all around with pretty much everybody who's participating in this, but we do think that we're going to land in a good place. I'm going to ask ahead of time that you please be patient with us as we experience the bumps in the spring, because we anticipate there will be some bumps, there will be some decisions that we're going to have to make based on situations that come up. So please bear with us as we transition to this. And I just wanted to say thank you. You've been terrific so far. The group that supported the transition and pilot year for the CCD process last year, everybody was extremely helpful, and we saw such good things that we are encouraged by what's going to happen in the spring of 23. So those were just a few final words from my end. Did we get more questions, Jess?
No. Well, actually, one came in. Do you expect the deadlines to go back to pre-EDPass in 23-24?
We haven't made a decision about the due dates for 23-24. My gut instinct is we need more stability. So I would expect things will be much closer to 22-23 than prior to that time period. So if you've got input for us on what you need or what you would recommend to us for 23-24, we would very much appreciate that feedback and input. One of the goals in changing the due dates to a later period of time was to allow states more time to address data quality issues. Since that time, we've also heard others say, hey, we've already closed out the data with our districts. We cannot go back and get corrections to data at the point in time where we have due dates. So we're getting kind of, there are different scenarios at play here. So if you've got input, would love to hear that. But my expectation is it'll be more stable and very similar to 22-23 at this point. Next summer, we should be releasing the 23-24 due dates.
At this time, there are no other questions. Kelly, would you like me to ask them just to submit them to PSC and we'll end?
Sounds great, unless David has anything else he'd like to add.
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kelly and David and Emily for presenting, but also to everyone for attending today. We know you guys have very busy schedules, so we appreciate the time you've set aside to learn about modernization and hear what we're working on and what we're doing to really get to a point where we can work with everyone and hit the go live in February. Also apologize for all the technical issues we experienced today, but thanks for hanging in there with us. And if you could just complete the post-webinar survey when you close down WebEx, we appreciate any and all feedback we can receive to enhance future webinars for the EDFacts community. Thank you again for joining, and we hope you have a great day.